everyone, Britt here from Scrappy Stamps, and today we're going to do something a little different. Let's make a scene using some older die sets. The Grass and Clouds Edger die and the stitched Clouds, Sun, and Lightning Bolt helps you to create different types of terrain and weather conditions for your scene cards. But today we're going to take two of the plain Cloud Edger dies and a product called Craft Plastic to stretch our die set and create our own reusable stencils. We'll also use the stitched sun and stitched clouds to finish off our scene, and although today we'll use them as die cut pieces as the die originally intended, these elements can also be turned into stencils using craft plastic. In past scene building videos, I've shown you a few different options of products you can use to help you with stenciling. Scrappy Boy stamps and stencils have worked perfectly with everything we've tried so far, so I wanted to show you how well they work with this positively perfect craft tacky mat from Simon Says Stamp. There are several of these photopolymer stamp mats on the market, and in case you were thinking of getting one, I wanted to show you how well it works with all your Scrappy Boy products. And although there are a few of these on the market from different companies, I liked that this version had some alignment guides for A2 and 5x7 card sizes, and this 8 1/4 by 6 1/4 size fits perfectly into a standard size MISTI stamping platform. But for our purposes today, we'll just stick it to our table. The paper panel I'll be using today, as well as both of the stencils I created, are held in place by the sticky photopolymer of the mat with no additional tape or adhesive necessary. For this 6x6 card panel, I did need to layer together both of the stencils I created in order to stretch the design so it fits this size of a card front. It allows me to slide the stencils back and forth and even switch their positions, creating more variation in the design. I've used Lost Shadow Distress ink on a blending brush to apply a light layer over the stencil. If you haven't guessed by now, we are creating piles and piles of snow. In this instance, the light gray ink creates shadows behind each mound of snow, and those shadows help to create depth in your scene. Now, this next step is important to create a seamless transition between your snow and your sky. Instead of using gray for the topmost line of snow, you should switch to the color of ink you wish to use for your sky. For this example, I'll use Stormy Sky and Broken China Distress ink. Here's a do what I say and not what I do moment. I knew I was going to be inking the rest of my panel all the way to the top, so I should have adjusted my panel down so that the entire back was supported by my stamping mat. Of course, I didn't realize this until after I had already started stenciling, but all I did to move it was apply a piece of tape over the stencil, temporarily attaching the stencil to the panel, which enabled me to lift the whole thing from the mat and shift it down. No harm done, and I was able to finish my inking without shifting my stencils. I did want to mention a little bit about the material that I used to create my stencils. I mentioned earlier that I used something called Craft Plastic. It's by a brand called Graphics, spelled with an X, and it's an opaque craft film that can be used for lots of applications. I love it for creating my own stencils because it die cuts very easily, but it's also a surface that can take many mediums, including alcohol ink. I highly recommend adding some of it to your stash because it's easier to die cut than Mylar stencil material, and it's a cheaper alternative to the popular Yupo paper for alcohol ink. Now let's get back to the card just in time for my favorite part, the peel and reveal. Now that our background is done, let's add the details. The stitched Cloud, Sun, and Lightning Bolt die set gives you tons of options for building your scene. And not only do you get that nice stitched edge on all of the positive pieces, you also get it on all of the negative pieces. This essentially means that you aren't limited to expecting that stitched detail to only be on the objects that you are cutting. So for example, you could use the little negative as a frame or even a little shaker window, and you would still get a finished look because of the stitched detail on both sides of the cut line. Let me know in a comment down below if you're interested in seeing this effect on future projects. Once I was finished adhering the sun and all of my clouds, I then used a pair of scissors to trim the excess and finish the sky. Off camera, I created probably my favorite part of this card, and I did it using what I think is the most versatile die in the whole Scrappy Boy catalog. The Candy House mini album die has a ton of possibilities, so I was able to pick and choose from all of the pieces in this die set. And with the help of this whimsical wood grain embossing folder from my stash, I was able to create Santa's Workshop. Now I knew I wanted the workshop to have all of that fluffy snow around it, so I went back to my Grass and Clouds Edger die and cut out some extra mounds of snow. But at the end of the day, Santa's Workshop would be nothing without Santa, Mrs. Claus, and at least one elf. This Santa's Workshop stamp set is so adorable. It has a perfect classic Christmas look, and it was super fun to color. Now I know that these images of Santa, Mrs. Claus, and our little friendly elf are inside images technically, but hear me out. Santa and the Misses and the whole North Pole gang, they're magical. Flying reindeer, a magic sleigh, the ability to stop time. Listen, if I became Jessica Kringle and Chris asked me to move to the North Pole onto a reindeer farm so he and his tiny little business partners could get into the toy business, there would have to be some benefits for me. Chop chop, Christopher. It's time to use a little bit of that Christmas magic to make you, me, and all of the elves impervious to the cold. So in my mind, sometimes, maybe say in the middle of June, Mrs. Claus gives him a little kiss on the cheek and suggests to Chris that maybe they need to take their work and their cocoa outside in the sunshine. Now, don't get me wrong. I know that card making, especially fun cards like this, are not really that deep, but I do think there is value in having a little bit of a thought experiment, especially when you're doing something like building a scene. Product designers bring you cute little characters, a bunch of accessories, and maybe little buildings or vehicles. And yes, of course, a lot of the time there is a classic way that those are intended to be used, sort of an obvious story that they're telling. But asking the question, what else could they be doing? Well, that's the part of it that's uniquely you. That's the part of the story you get to tell. At the end of the day, the magic, the therapeutic part of art and creativity is that you get to tell your version of the story, and it is worth doing. Even if the story is just you imagining what you would demand of Santa if he was trying to make you move to the North Pole. Now, I know I didn't give a lot of additional instruction as I was finishing up our scene. Today's video is purposely shorter and focuses only on the stenciling technique, while also just giving me a little time to chat with you. Let me know in the comments if you like the kind of video like this where it might be a little shorter and a little more chatty, but I would still focus on a useful technique or show you how to stretch your favorite supplies. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Now, I went ahead and added some gems to Santa's workshop to give it a little bit of sparkle, and although it is a little bit hard to catch it on film, I also wanted to add some glitter to the snow. So I pulled out my glitter brush pen from Wink of Stella and added some subtle glittery highlights to the top of all of my snow mounds. Originally, I was going to stop here, but the more I looked at this scene, the more that I felt like it needed something else. And to me, nothing creates that wintry marshmallow world as much as snowflakes. Last but not least, I am attempting to show you the shaker mixes I used to create this look. But as you can see, it ended in a big mess. But I cleaned it up, no big deal, and it all worked out in the end. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for joining me today. We love you in our little crafty community, and we could not do this without you. Speaking of community, if you're not doing so already, please come and follow us on our Instagram and on our Facebook group. There you'll find new releases, shipping updates, a monthly challenge, and inspiration from our amazing design team. If you are interested in getting your hands on any of the goodies I used in this video, please visit the store at scrappyboy.com. Links to all of our socials, the store, and all the places you can find me are in the description box below. Finally, if you enjoyed this video, please give this a thumbs up, leave me a comment, and make sure that you're subscribed to the Scrappy Boy channel so you don't miss future uploads. And if nothing else, have this food for thought. He knows when you're sleeping, he knows when you're awake, he knows if you've been bad or good, and I feel like we don't talk about how creepy that is. But anyhow, Merry Christmas and Happy Everything. See you next time. Bye.